Hi, I'm Mark Sumner, CEO and founder of Robertson Sumner. Welcome to the Channel Chat podcast, where we will share learnings, best practices and failures with some of the biggest names in the IT industry. Today I had the pleasure of being joined by Alex Tatham, the MD of Westcoast, the largest privately owned IT business in the UK. Various topics we talked about, from women in channel and educating children in the UK to come into the IT industry, but I was overwhelmed with his positivity around the future of IT and the investment in IT and the investment in the channel. So sit back, listen and enjoy. Hello, I'm Mark Sumner, host of the Channel Chat podcast show, and today I have the pleasure of having industry legend, really, Alex Tatham in the house. How are we doing, Alex?
Well, I'm not used to be calling a legend. Sometimes I'm known as an industry veteran. Veteran. Which I'm not sure is any better, frankly. Yeah. What I am, however, is delighted to be here.
Great. Thanks very much for coming on the show, Alex. So, I normally ask people how they got into this industry, but I do want to ask, how does a guy who studied zoology and animal biology at university end up running one of the largest private companies in the UK?
Well, it's obvious, frankly, because basically the channel is a bunch of animals, and they need study. Seriously, before I went to university, and this is a good bit of advice for everyone, which I often give when I go into schools, and I say, when you go to university, the bit of advice that I got from an accountant, because I said, what do I have to study to become an accountant? After the end of university, he said, study anything but accountancy. And secondly, do something that you love. Now, by the way, whether it's accountancy or anything else that you do, I think this is an excellent bit of advice. Is that if you're leaving school, and going to university and deciding what you want to study, do something that you're passionate about. Because actually, when you come out of university and you can talk enthusiastically about the course that you run, that is much more interesting to a prospective employer, other than the fact that you've got a 2-1 and studied ancient history because that's the thing that you are keen to do. It is so much more interesting if you are really excited about what you do and come across that way to a prospective employer. And I would always say to any school leaver listening, or someone trying to decide what they want to do at university, firstly, do something that you love. And then you'll be able to talk about it for the rest of your life. And I can still talk to you about frog muscle spindles if you would like.
Brilliant. So when was your first dabble into the world of IT? What was your first job?
Well, do you know, I became an accountant after I left university. I qualified with EY, as they are now. And I stayed on a lot longer afterwards. I did all sorts of fun things. I'm surprisingly quite a gregarious accountant, and therefore I got to do all the fun stuff like fraud and corporate finance, and I was head of graduate recruitment, and the other thing that I particularly got involved in was the nuclear industry. So none of that was IT related at all, but one thing I did do quite often was do quite a lot of client training, and I had a great friend who knew that I did this. And he said, we're setting up a new business in Ideal Hardware. Would you like to come across and run that particular part of the business? And I said, well, that sounds great. It's a bit different from what I'm currently doing. I really love Ernst & Young, but let's have a go, because maybe I'll go back into the profession again. At least I can say that I've practiced what I've preached.
Yeah.
I haven't done any accountancy since.
Because they were in Chessington at the time, weren't they, Ideal Hardware?
Ideal Hardware, fantastic business.
Yeah.
What a wonderful entry point into the channel, and all the Ideal Hardware people that worked with me and alongside James, Kevin and Simon would be absolutely just thrilled. All over the channel they are at the moment, and we still have an extraordinary affinity back for distribution, back for Ideal Hardware. It was a really innovative, exciting business. It almost said yes to everything, and we had no limits. James was an inspiration as an employer for me personally, and saw something in me well beyond client training, because within 6 months I was effectively head of HR, running a sales team, doing all sorts of things that I had no dream of, nowhere near the finance department, and clearly saw that in me that I hadn't seen in myself. and perhaps if I had any regrets, perhaps I'd have got into sales more quickly than I did do, because I really love selling things. I really love our customers. I love chatting to customers, and I love the sort of the commerce that goes on with distribution, and I think it's an exciting place to be. So I think that's a really interesting moment, because whilst I loved EY, most people who know me anyway, Mark, will know that I love most things anyway. So I'm very optimistic, very enthusiastic. I only have one skill, and that's being fantastic.
Because funny enough, when I first started Robertson Sumner, Ideal Hardware was one of the first customers I started dealing with. So like Gordon Milner,
Yes.
Dickie Gadd, Tony Lowe was the HR manager, and them. And when I went down for the first time I actually did some recruitment for you, I was amazed at sort of like the bear pit of the sales office, because it was like almost like a Wolf of Wall Street like bear pit office.
Well, it was an extraordinary place, and it really was, and a very high pressurized sales environment. Kevin was the sales director, sat in the middle of the sales floor with a Tasmanian devil behind him, and it was a very highly pressurized sales environment, and it was commission only for those guys in sales at the time when we first started. It gradually changed, of course, over time, but actually, what an extraordinary way to learn, and what a change from the cosseted world of accountancy and a big professional firm into Ideal Hardware, which was certainly not.
So tell me about your career there. So you started off, and then you said within 6 months you're almost...
Yeah, exactly. And funny enough, the first time that I really got going at Ideal and showed that I could do it was I was asked to set up a European sales team, because, would you believe, Fujitsu disk drives, selling 1 gigabyte disk drives, were almost the first company to give a distributor a pan-European contract. Previously to that, it was very country by country. You weren't allowed to sell cross-border, even though you clearly were. And that was something that they did. And they said, right, what we need to do is to set up a multinational team from scratch. From scratch. And they said, Alex, they gave it to someone to do, Partiv, and he left. He said, James flew me straight in and said, Alex, you do it. And so we began to build up a team, and eventually it became a team of about 25 people, all from different countries around the world, all sitting in Chessington, selling disk drives and other things that we are allowed to sell on a pan-European basis, so Italians and Spanish and Germans and Bulgarians, and it was just a tremendous, exciting place. I had this great Swedish guy called Stefan Holmqvist, he was called, and he taught me something marvellous to know. He says, Alex, if violence doesn't work, use more violence. And it's a philosophy perhaps that I've used in a slightly less toned way over the time. But the point is, don't give up. Yeah, and I think that is a really good bit of advice for any listener, is please don't give up. There's always a way of getting this done, getting the deal done, and I think that's something that I would impress upon all your listeners.
Brilliant. So, and how long do you have the tenure at Ideal Hardware?
Ideal Hardware for quite a long time, because of course Ideal Hardware then got sold. It did the most amazing thing. Effectively, the business was hived down into a new company, and the previous listed company on the stock exchange became a .com called Interex. And the share price went from £2.50 to £39 almost overnight. And effectively then what happened is that Ideal Hardware got sold to a fantastic US storage business called Bell Micro. And Bell Micro Products, which is a listed NASDAQ business run by its founder, Don Bell. He bought Ideal Hardware with Ian French as the boss of that business, and me as the UK and commercial director of the business. And it was a great success, frankly. We made the transition pretty quickly. We were a very large worldwide storage business, and the business did very well in the first few years. And of course, then the component business got harder and harder and harder to deal with, and we had to get more and more involved in some of the more exciting and enterprise elements of the business. And we were, as a result, became a Compaq distributor and then an HP distributor for some of the enterprise products that we did. I always remember one of my colleagues, Mark Walker, when HP bought Compaq, he was sitting on a beach, and we said, Mark, terribly sorry, your vendor's just been acquired by HP. He said, what? They never told me. Yeah, I said, Mark, I probably was a slightly bigger deal than it was for you. You probably weren't their first thought. Nevertheless, that was obviously a pivotal moment in the business, and Bell Micro effectively traded down, and around about 2007 got acquired by Avnet, and I had left just beforehand. I joined a little business called Sims for a year or so as a memory business, still trading very well, and I'd known Joe Hamani because Ideal Hardware used to compete with Westcoast, and Westcoast, we were a very similar size business, around about 100 million in the late 90s, and we were the two digital PC distributors, and as Joe has very often reminded me at the time, Westcoast used to sell all their PCs. We used to hold on and hold the price up, and once Westcoast had run out, then we'd make all the money from Ideal Hardware and double the margin. That was the approach that Digital took some time ago, I think. Nevertheless, that I knew Joe, I knew the team at Westcoast at that point, and I met Joe, and Joe was clearly looking for a new director in his business, and within days of me joining Westcoast, I was appointed as the new sales and marketing director at Westcoast, and that was clearly something that needed to happen, something that I think the business was looking for, someone to lead that particular charge, and I think what was interesting, Mark, is that I very much learnt from my whole career, particularly at Ideal Hardware, and I found that Westcoast was a pretty attritional place. It was quite a hard, and there was a lot of hiring and firing going on. It didn't really feel like a lovely place to work. And so I set about doing something that I think that I did when I ran that sales team on a pan-European basis, is that I used to sit next door to the people that weren't performing well. And I, rather than said, do it like this and shout at them, what I used to do is to sit and say, well, why don't you try it like this? And why don't we do this together? Why don't we go and see that customer together? And I actually managed underneath them. And I think that's a philosophy that I've taken at Westcoast all the way through, both as sales director and also now as the managing director, as I like to say that our structure effectively exists with our key people running the business, and us as
you
managers,
work for them,
and our managers effectively supporting them and helping them achieve. And I think that is how that I really would like to categorise what I did, and I think that it couldn't be more different from the way Ideal Hardware ran its business to the way we run Westcoast now. Yeah. And very much we really ask all of our managers to manage underneath their people to try and help them achieve. And that, of course, is not always possible because not all the time that they do. But nevertheless, I want to make sure that they get the best shot. They want to come and work for Westcoast. No one comes to work to fail. And I want to make sure that they have the best chance of doing that. And I will help any of my people, any of them, that wants me to go and see any of their customers. I'll go and do that for them.
Because that's quite a Simon Sinek, leaders eat last sort of way of thinking, isn't it? Actually working for the people, etc., and protecting them. Now, distribution has got a bit of a, let's say, reputation, like you said, for hiring and firing. Quite a bit, almost like a bit of the dirty part of the channel. People don't normally want to work there. How have you sort of changed that philosophy? You've touched on it already, but how have you changed that philosophy in Westcoast, and how do you continue to do that?
Well, I think actually I do change that philosophy, and I think that they do want to come and work for Westcoast. And I think Westcoast is now Britain's largest privately owned IT business. It is growing at 15 to 20% per annum. It feels like a place where you can really learn, earn, and have fun. And that is an exciting place for any person joining the IT industry. Distribution, one of the great things about distribution is it's a great place to start your career. Yeah, because most of your resellers have to buy from a distributor in some fashion. Therefore, the sale is relatively soft. The pricing these days is all pretty level in terms of how you do it. So therefore, it's really what you're trying to learn is about account management, some of the sales skills that we do, and we train lots of people. And of course, the business now is so big, that the whole group now employs something like 1,600 people. And therefore, we've got a huge training division who are doing tremendously great things and really trying to make sure that all our people can succeed and learn things. So I would suggest that perhaps those thoughts that distribution is a dirty side of the channel, no longer is applicable.
Good.
I think actually the whole model is changing, and our model at Westcoast is about partnering with resellers. Because if you're treating your distributor as a warehouse that's got some kit and I'd like some today, please, well, that you can. Yeah, but effectively you can go online and you can buy it from distribution if you want to. What you really need is a partnership with them so I can help you achieve what your objectives are. And that's much more of a business goal. And so that you're seeing Westcoast hire many more business people to talk about business and how we actually can transform a reseller and do the things that we do best so they don't have to. And they can focus on digitally transforming their end users or taking their customers to the cloud. So there's a whole range of things that distribution can now do probably better than a VAR used to be. Used to say that was their value, was to have a lovely warehouse with a lovely config center. That is pointless. Pointless. Almost the first words out of my mouth to any customer now would be, Mark, why have you got a warehouse?
Yeah.
Why have you got a warehouse? Softcat have got a business that's worth 2.4 billion with a warehouse the size of this room. You don't need a warehouse. That's what distribution does, and we do it better than anyone else. We do config now better than anyone else, and our ability to be able to service both vendors and resellers in a totally different way is transformational to their business, and it's one of the reasons that I think Westcoast have been so successful.
Where do you think that when the word value-added distribution come into it, where people normally sort of say, "Oh, I'm just ringing up for pricing from distribution. That's what they want to get."
Yep.
But they can obviously get value-added from distribution. Where do you see is the value that not just Westcoast but distribution in general brings?
Mark, one of my great things is I hate the word value add. Yeah. Firstly, I think it's an excuse for distributors who say that they're a value-added distributor to keep their prices high. And if they're not adding any value, then I don't think they should be able to keep their prices high. Westcoast's job is to take cost out of the supply chain, not put it in. And it's not, our value, if you like, is to be what you want me to be to help your business, not to try and say, well, we really, really need to add some value to this particular product because we're the only guy who does it. And that clearly is not the approach that I think that the channel wants or needs or the vendor themselves need. Actually, what they need is some great marketing, some ability to be able to extol the virtue of it. And if you do need to be able to have some pre-sales and some key things that to support that vendor, which of course some vendors you do need to be able to charge for that. So it isn't about value add, it's about making sure that you need to be able to do some things in order to be able to provide that vendor effectively to a wide range of resellers. That's not value add, that's just recovering your cost. Make sure that you are effective and efficient as a business, because that is what resellers really need. They need to make sure that they can just rely on you to be able to do all these things and not overcharge you.
Great. So you obviously were doing the sales and marketing director role at Westcoast. When you got the MD role, how did you know, or how did Joe know that you were ready to take the MD role? How did you?
What a lovely way of thinking that this was all deeply discussed with huge, great management, in-depth analysis, and psychometric testing. Joe came in one day, had a cup of coffee, said, "Alex, come and see me. Alex, I'd like to make you MD." Oh, thanks very much, Joe. That's great.
There was no interview process, nothing.
Nothing. That was it.
No.
That was it.
Over a coffee, he told you the MD.
The good news is we have been working together for 6 years. Okay, so this isn't necessarily something that I was expecting. I necessarily thought that was going to happen, and actually, Westcoast and Joe in particular is a maverick individual who is just delightful to work for, largely because as an MD, he's only given me one instruction, which was, Alex, grow the damn thing. He gave me the same instruction when I first joined the business, and as an MD, my instruction has never been any different. And that is effectively what we've done. When I joined the business had just effectively made 2 acquisitions, so I did some restructuring at that point, particularly the sales floor at that particular point. The business was around about 600 million, and Westcoast in 2019 turned over 2.82 billion. So that is the level of growth that we've achieved.
It's phenomenal.
The business is growing at around about 10 to 12% per annum. It could easily do more than that. That is the impact I think that we want to make and want to continue to make. And I think that I can't see any reason why that isn't going to happen.
And you said earlier, Alex, you're naturally gregarious and optimistic, but what would you say is the secret sauce to that success? Because there's not other companies are saying they're going to be doing that or they've had that success.
Well, very little, but very few of them are.
Yeah.
So I think that you've got to have a lot of self-belief, that you can. I think that if you find yourself doing things that are different. This isn't about trying to do the same thing as you always did and expect a different result. Therefore, you've got to be innovative. Now, I am lucky. I work for one of Britain's great entrepreneurs. Joe founded this business in 1984. This business has been a tremendous success story all the way through. It's never made a loss ever as a business, since 2000, it's just grown and grown and grown. And I think if I look at that, the key reasons to that success is largely a belief that we can do anything. And if I go and see a customer, I generally will ask them about their business first, so I can be able to say, if I can show you a way that I could take cost out of that and solve that problem for you, would you give me all your business? And funnily enough, they say yes. Then I walk out of the room, I go, oh no idea how I'm going to do that. However, the point is that we do come away with a very flexible, very bendy structure, and it's about business agility. And actually, being a privately owned business, the size of Westcoast, is a tremendous advantage. You don't know how much of an advantage it is until you work for a privately owned business that is that flexible that it can bend into the shape that your customers and your vendors want you to. That is what we've done so effectively.
Do you think that flexibility is key for your success?
I would say it's almost the number one, and the speed of decision making that we have. Between those two things are the reason for Westcoast. And
even at the size you are now, you're £1 billion company, you still got very quick decisions.
So one thing I did learn from Ideal Hardware, Mark, is that I sit in the middle of the sales floor. We don't have an open door policy because there are no doors. We are absolutely open plan as a business. Joe and I sit next door to each other. Sumner, our CFO, and our ops director, Andy Newbury, sit at the far end of the room. And between us, we make decisions like lightning. There is no referral of 15 places that I've got to go to some boss in the States somewhere to be able to do these things. I just don't do any of those things. I just say, yes, do it. And it's that fast and that speedy that generally that's rather frightening to many of the resellers that we have. And they say, I didn't think you were going to come back to us quite that quickly. Well, that's how fast that we make those decisions. We move very, very quickly. And also, once we've decided to do it, we then move fast. Take our new Andover warehouse as an example. This warehouse is a blank space. It is now a 460,000 square feet of warehouse, and within 6 months, it's fully racked, fully trading, automated, and is now shipping 2 million a day. It is an astonishing achievement by our team, and I had nothing to do with it, by the way. That is all of our ops team, headed by Andy and his team. They've done a tremendous job, and the reason that we've done it is that because we can see all that growth. It's a great thing. Graham Watt once spoke to me and said, one of the great things that you can learn about a business is where they're investing and where you ask them where their investments are. If you look at where Westcoast are investing, well, that Andover warehouse, for instance, tells you that actually the business is going to grow. It's going to grow like crazy. And there is lots of reasons to build a big space with a config center that's now the size of our existing warehouse. That is the kind of growth we're expecting over the next 5 years or so.
Fantastic. How do you think distribution in general needs to adapt to the marketplace?
Distribution is one of the great things that has adapted so well. History will tell us here. Let's look at the demise of distributors. It was keenly predicted. James Wicks called me into the office when I was first there and said, distribution, we're going to be killed by TNT, the shipping company. Because they are absolutely going to get involved in all of this, and they're going to absolutely eat distributors' lunch. Where are TNT these days? I seem to can't remember. Anyway, that was the first thing. The second thing, licensing. That licensing, that's Microsoft going direct. You won't get involved in that at all. Who are the biggest licensing players in the country? Distributors. The internet, that's going to kill you off. No, we are huge web shops. Wonderful web shops from all large distributors. All have amazing web capability and presence. Cloud. That's the latest thing. Cloud. Surely that's the death knell. Microsoft taking everyone direct. Who are the largest cloud players in the entire of Europe? Westcoast is the largest Microsoft Azure partner in Europe. Yeah, there is no question that distribution can adapt. It adapts to its times, it adapts to its threats, and it adapts extraordinarily quickly and well. Actually, it's everyone else that actually can't adapt as fast. And what happens is that you get new customers as a result, and some of the old customers disappear. So actually what you're seeing, it's distribution, because of that agility that it has, and its ability to be able to take cost out of a supply chain, any supply chain, that I think it's been a tremendous success story, and particularly IT distribution.
Yep.
Because I think actually, if you think about how IT distribution has got bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's all distributors around the world, and of course they've consolidated and got bigger and bigger, they create this enormous gravitational pull for other channels that are running in parallel to IT distribution. So telephony, for instance, and mobile phones. Well, Westcoast are now the largest mobile phone distributor in the country. The reason is that it just sucks new channels into it, and other vendors begin to expand what they do, and of course leaves Westcoast with an ability to be able to take cost out of all of those other channels because they tend to be less efficient than IT distribution.
Do you think there's been a lot of consolidation in distribution in recent years, and then there's a couple of sort of high-profile liquidations as well, like Beta and Stelges? Do you see anything else happening in the near future? Any more consolidations?
Well, if you're asking me to predict the demise of any of my either competitors or customers, I'd love to be able to predict the demise of all my competitors. But that's because I've got all their business. I don't think that's going to happen, Mark. Yeah? What I can possibly say is that there will always be successful distributors. If you think about products, Stelges, for instance, were almost a one product, one vendor distributor, Smart. Yeah, and of course they lived and died by the success of Smart themselves. In effect, I think the secret is to make sure that you diversify. If you look at Westcoast at one point in time, 95% of its business came from one vendor, which is HP. And of course now, I would say that that's less than 20% of its business comes from HP.
So you think diversification, that was a big...
I think it's a really important thing. You can't be reliant on any one particular partner to be able to do that. But what you have got to be is a great partner for all of your vendors and all of your reseller customers too. And partnership is the word here. If you are merely a transacting player and all you are doing is buying stock and selling it again, and you don't really know who to or why, then you're not adding any value at all. And that is when I think that you are in trouble, no matter what company that you are.
Fair enough. In 2015, you commissioned a report about what resellers said or felt about distribution. And one of the findings was 92% of resellers were frustrated with distribution. How do you think those sort of findings would differ now, 2020? Do you think?
I think they'd be quite similar.
Really?
It frustrates me to say that. I'm frustrated with our customers being frustrated by us. I think that there is so much demand on distribution. So many things have got to go right, and so many things have got to go well to make sure that customers never feel as though that they are under frustrated, and totally satisfied with their distribution partner. Where they do get satisfied is really when they lump onto a distributor. And I think that's where I would try and say, if we have a relationship where a customer of Westcoast has promised us a particular line of business and promised it all to us, then that effectively allows us to work extremely hard with that reseller to make sure that the reseller is successful, because I'm not dealing with purchasing anymore, because it's all coming back to me. And that, I think, is when, because you're working in partnership, that level of frustration goes away and the communication gets better. If you only are a transacting partner, very often you get frustrated because you haven't got the stock that they wanted, or the credits run out, or something's happened. Yeah. And there's always that happens all the time with distribution, I think. And because we stock so many lines, we've got 150,000 live SKUs in our system.
150,000 live SKUs.
Live SKUs. Jeez. That's how many things you can order from Westcoast, to the tiddly spare to the largest 3D
mind-boggling,
printer.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling. Yeah. Funny enough, I don't have them all in stock.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry to all my customers out there.
But how would you say, what advice would you give to a reseller who said, look, I really want to get a partnership with Westcoast or a distributor. I really want to enhance it. What are the best way of them going about enhancing the relationship with you?
Well, you can give me a call. I mean, literally, I'll pick up the phone. You always can phone me. You can contact me. I will respond to every email and phone call that I get. Speak to your account manager. Get them to speak to me. If you want to visit from me, then I'll come and talk to you. We've got a range of approximately 20 partner business managers who are all empowered to do exactly that thing that you just talked about. And their job is to get out and see you and talk business to you, as opposed to, let me go through your credit notes and your orders. Yeah, this is about how we do business together and how do we make you, Mr. Customer, more successful. And that is what I would do. So as a customer, reseller customer listening, by all means, pick up the phone. We don't have any voicemail at Westcoast, and you can get straight through to any member of staff. You can get straight through to me. You're always welcome to speak to me. Nevertheless, your partner business manager and any partner business manager will come and see you, and we'll try and get that kind of relationship going.
Great. Vendors. Let's talk vendors.
Okay.
How would you say you decide which vendors to use and which vendors not to use? Is it?
Okay, that's a really good. I think when you get bigger, this is a difficult point, because sometimes you get a vendor who really would like to deal with you.
Yeah.
You actually think that you haven't got a competing product, for instance. You've got it's a potential opportunity, but you realise that it's just going to be really hard to navigate your way through the mass that is Westcoast, that is talking about growing in hundreds of millions of pounds, and you're going to add a massive 3.5 million if you are really successful. It's going to be tough, that. Yeah. So I think that my advice to any vendor generally is, when we have those kind of meetings, I said, well, there may be an opportunity, but it's going to be tough. So we've got to find a way of navigating our business the best way we can to make you successful if you're going to choose Westcoast as your distributor. If you don't think that that's the right thing to do, don't appoint Westcoast as your distributor. I won't get offended by it, because we're growing at that kind of rate. So you've got to fit in with the distributor's own objectives. This isn't about how many things can I fit on my line card. Westcoast is not, I would describe ourselves as a broad liner. We have obviously plenty of vendors, and some that we do extremely well, but the majority of our business comes from 6 key vendors, and basically that huge amount of ink and toner that we also do so well. We do over 50% of the UK and Ireland's ink and toner business, and that's growing all the time still, would you believe? So the joy of that being, as Joe would describe it, as narrow and deep. The reason that we do that is that our people know about those vendors. They can answer the reseller's question, the customer's questions off the bat without having to refer to someone else. And we spend a lot of time training our sales guys on those particular bits of business, Mark. And because they are good at it, and we therefore have a narrow focus, then generally resellers tend to buy the things that they can buy from Westcoast, because we're really good at it. Perhaps it would be easy for, say, would other people like to come to that? When we lump on to a particular vendor, we really lump on. And, I quote Neil Sawyer, for instance, says, I work with the other guys, but I partner with you, Westcoast. And I think that's the same with the way I'd like to say to any customer or vendor, I want you to be our partner. We're doing the things for you and with you, to those resellers, for them and with them, to make us all successful through this. If as a vendor you don't think that you can commit to that kind of level of partnership, then we're probably the wrong distributor for you.
It's an interesting point, Alex, because I've had so many guests on the show now talking about, in the channel, the best partnerships are honest, transparent, they're, relationships, etc. But there seems to be a distinct lack of that. There seems to be a little not trusting partners, not trusting vendors, not trusting distribution. How can we, as a channel in general, fix those relationships?
Well, I think the first thing you're now saying that would apply to Westcoast, because it doesn't. I have a huge amount of trust with our vendors and a huge amount of trust with our reseller partners. And our job is to make sure that we do trust each other. We'll be totally open book with them. We'll show how much money we're making. We'll be totally clear to say, these are the margins that we're going to charge you for doing this work. And together, hopefully, we can make ourselves more successful. I don't feel like there is that kind of relationship anywhere. This isn't about, gone are the days of Mr. Vendor selling it to me so I can get a special discount so that I can then spiff my salespeople and get them to win a holiday for selling it to you, Mr. Reseller, so you can put it to your warehouse on a day that you can win a holiday. It feels nuts.
Yes.
If you think about it, our job is to take cost out of the supply chain, not give everyone a free holiday. Our job really is to make sure that we can make the end user successful and deliver beautifully to the end user. And that surely is what all 3 participants of the channel
should be doing.
Is trying to do.
Yeah.
And if we're not doing that, then have a look at yourself.
Yeah, good. Women in channel, you're a big advocate about women in channel. What do you think?
Yes, I am.
What can be done to 16.9% of women in the channel at the moment? What can be done to enhance those figures and get more people? I know they're doing the Women's Festival and they've had the last 2 years' awards. Is there anything else that we should be doing?
Yes, because there are so many things to do in this channel. And actually, it's not just the channel, it's the IT industry. The IT industry is appallingly served by women in terms of there are just not enough of them. There are not enough people coming into the channel, into the profession, into the IT industry. They're not studying STEM subjects at school. They're not studying STEM subjects at university. 96% of the world's computer code is written by a man. 90% of the UK's graduates, computer science graduates, are men. This is almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's quite hard to break that easily. So the first thing I think that you can do, and doesn't matter which particular channel partner is listening to this, one of the things that I took away from Sky, and the Sky Ops Director, it says that if you are interviewing for a position, and actually he applies it to any position, you have to have a woman on the shortlist. You have to. And that's quite tough, because if you haven't got any women applying, and very frequently you don't have any women applying, you've got to go find them, just to apply. You may not hire them, and I think that's quite a way of doing it. I don't say that will work for everyone, and Westcoast have absolutely adopted a policy of trying to make sure that any senior position that we adopt has a woman on the shortlist. Funnily enough, we've hired more women.
Yeah.
Now, that's what happens when you do that. I'm not saying that necessarily it's perfect, but everything needs to be small steps. So what can you do? I don't say that you have to positively discriminate for women in the channel. What you have to do is to give them a damn chance. And I think it doesn't matter which board you sit on, make sure that you have that kind of policy in your hiring procedure, so that at least that you recognise the problem, because it is a problem. And clearly, the more girls and women that we have in our industry, the better our industry will become. We've also, however, got a job to do in the raw material. And what that means is that I think our channel has an extremely important job to do in schools. No matter how big or small your business is, you can always go into a school. Now, one of the things, Mark, and I'm sorry, you've got me on a bit of a topic that I really, really are passionate about. One of the things that's happening out there at the moment is that the schools have all got to adopt something called the Gatsby principles. They're going to be mandated and Ofsted auditable from September this year. And that is that every school kid has got to have a touch with some kind of business and some kind of careers lessons all the way through their secondary education. The reason is that, funnily enough, the government have done some surveying, and if you do this and you go and see a business once every year in your secondary education, you are on 20% more and 18% more likely to get a job. Though, funnily enough, the government have gone nuts for this and have said every school has got to have a senior member of their teaching team has got to be in charge of careers. They've got to be on the senior management committee. There's got to be a careers dedicated teacher in all major secondary schools. And by the way, they really need help. These guys can't just do it on their own. So you, in the IT industry, and everyone listening, get yourself into a school. They will be delighted to see you, I can assure you, and just tell them about what you do. Because that is the kind of inspiration that everyone needs in our schools. It doesn't matter whether you're in marketing, whether you're in the warehouse, whatever department that you're in, just go and tell them about what you do. Because if you're in the IT industry, this country is going to be famous for IT in 5 years' time and not for manufacturing. Yeah, so that is something that Brexit is certainly going to bring to our country, and therefore, as a result, it's critical that we get everyone involved in IT, and that, of course, includes girls. So that's a slightly longer answer to your question. Yeah, don't ask me about the dirty knife.
Oh dear. Alex, let's get on to the awards ceremony. So you've got the awards in the Battersea.
I like an award.
In November, and also you get the Sales and Marketing Awards. Now, one of the awards that I think you won last year was it Best Place to Work?
Yes, we did.
Was that something you specifically went for because of?
Yes, we've been thinking and wanting to win a Best Place to Work award for some time, because clearly Westcoast needed to improve as a place to work, and the things that we do to help people in our overall sustainability policy within the business. And again, you can tell that I'm passionate about several of these things. I think it's a wonderful accolade for our business to get that. By the way, entering an award as a whole, doesn't matter which award you enter, gets you to challenge yourself a bit and answer some of those questions, and suddenly realise that we're not going to win this award because I can't answer those two questions, because I can't answer them well and honestly enough to be able to win something. However, by entering, if you like, it pulls you in a direction I think that you should be going. And as long as the awards are well thought through and are very, very honourable, as we want to award the right people for doing the right things, then actually I think that's a virtuous circle that you can close. And when you win an award, by the way, that is a super thing to have.
Yeah, it was funny because we got shortlisted the last 2 years for Channel Service Provider of the Year, which was something where I thought, well, we really can't win that because we're not a traditional MSP. Yes, we service the channel, but we're not an MSP. And this year, they actually at the SMA Awards this year, they've actually come out and said Best Sales and Marketing Agency for this. So we're going into that. So shameless plug, we're obviously going that. If we don't win that, we'll be rioting on the day. But
can I just say, vote for Robertson Sumner.
But hopefully we'll be seeing you on the night. One of the things I wanted to ask you, what's even a personal or a company award, what's the one award that you're most proud of as an individual?
Well, there's no question that I think the best award that you can win as a person in distribution was the Channel Personality or Editor's Choice Award or whatever at CRN. I was overwhelmed when that happened to me. You do your job because you do it and because you love it. And all of a sudden, when that happens, then I think I was slightly overwhelmed by that.
Was that 2 years ago? Was it
3 years ago? I think
yeah,
it was.
I remember being there. Yeah.
Well, it's nice of you to say so, but I was overwhelmed by it because actually there isn't a bigger award that we can win. I don't think I can. Until they give me a knighthood, I can't win. Yeah, and that really is a really wonderful honour. I think that there's only one a year, and one personal award that's one of the CRN awards. And by the way, I think the CRN awards are really important. And anyone listening, I'm sure that each industry has got their own little awards, but the IT channel, the CRN awards is an extraordinary event. There is nothing bigger than the CRN awards in our industry, and the industry would be very much poorer if those awards did not happen and did not exist. So bloody enter.
Yeah, good. Last few questions, a couple of quick fire questions from the listeners. A few people mentioned how you met your wife was an original way, and I know CRN mentioned you that 70 million people watched your wedding. But for those of you who don't know, explain what happened.
I'm sure that's a mere bagatelle to this podcast. I'm fully expecting it come first in the podcast ratings for the year. I'm delighted to say that Sue and I, number 2 from the West Midlands, are still married.
What's been the best gift you've ever received from your career?
I think it's a question that I couldn't answer easily without thinking about it much harder. I'll give you a bit of advice, perhaps, that was given to me by a senior partner at EY who I work for. She was called Jane Green, and she said, "There is no problem in business that is too big to fix." You may have to throw money at it. You may have to do all sorts of things, but there is no problem in business that's too big to fix. And sometimes when you think, gosh, I really can't see my way around this, I recall that bit of advice to me and say, we're going to fix it. And then I don't give up and we get through. And I'd say that would be a good gift to you all.
And my last question then, if you were going to give one bit of advice to
It's a bit trite, sorry.
if you were going to give one bit of advice for either a contributor, a salesperson, or a future MD or leader who wanted to make a name for themselves in our IT channel in the industry, what bit of advice would you give them to make a name for themselves in the IT channel?
Well, firstly, obviously work for Westcoast and land a huge order. And then I'll make you a name for yourself. Listen, let me tell you what I think is important in our industry. I think sales is critical. We are a sales industry. Up and down the channel is a sales industry. Therefore, hopefully you're contributing. Doesn't matter which part of the business that you work in, by the way, you're part of that sale. And make sure, I took a customer around a warehouse the other day, and fantastic, Amanda Dunkley in our warehouse in Milton Keynes just made such an impression on the customer. We won a huge, huge order as a result of it. It doesn't matter which part of the business that you work in, make sure that you're part of the sale and feel as though that you can really contribute to the success of the business. And the success of the business is about sales and about growth. It is. And no matter what you say, and of course you can say I'm, credit, and therefore I'm, not giving any credit to these particular people, but it's still about making sure that you enable your customers to trade effectively with you. So I'd say wherever you are, make sure that you're part of the sale and do your very, very best. And my goodness me, there is so many things to do and so much excitement to have within the IT industry. We often say at Westcoast, we're like the weather in Scotland. You don't know where we are because it could be raining next week, but in 10 minutes it'll change. So that's how dynamic I think that you have to be in your industry, and you've no idea where you may end up, of course. Good luck.
Alex, you've been a fantastic guest. Thanks for your time.
Thanks a lot, Mark.
Cheers then. Thanks for joining us and listening to another episode of our Channel Chat podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard and are listening on iTunes, please could you give us a review and subscribe in order to get the newest episodes as soon as they're released. Otherwise, as always, we release an episode every Thursday at midday, so hopefully you can join us then.